Hyungju's greatest assassin, a 25-year-old named Seol Yuyeon, possessed extraordinary talents that manifested early in her life. Like many individuals with remarkable abilities, Yuyeon demonstrated exceptional promise even as a child. Remarkably, as just a baby, she exhibited unusual strength and coordination by pulling herself up to stand using the leg of a chair for support. By the age of 3, her reflexes were astonishing, allowing her to catch a fly with her bare hand, a feat most adults would find challenging. Furthermore, at the tender age of 5, her precision was uncanny. She could throw a dagger while blindfolded and consistently hit the bullseye, showcasing an innate talent for weaponry. With the young Yuyeon in tow, her granny Kwok happily stepped through the doors of Baekgwajang, an institution specifically designed for fostering and training assassins. Within Baekgwajang, Yuyeon excelled in the mastery of a diverse array of weapons, including swords, bows, and poisons, demonstrating a natural aptitude for combat and subterfuge. Moreover, no wall proved too high or obstacle too challenging for her to scale, highlighting her exceptional agility and physical prowess. Adding to her formidable skills, Yuyeon possessed a striking beauty and an extensive knowledge of literature, qualities that further enhanced her effectiveness and allure. When Baekgwajang eventually closed down, Yuyeon and her granny Kwok established a new life for themselves in Hyungju. Over the subsequent years, the two amassed considerable wealth, primarily due to Yuyeon's unparalleled success in her chosen profession. Soon, her treasure box overflowed with silver and other valuable possessions, a testament to her lucrative career. There was a singular, crucial reason why she achieved such remarkable wealth at a pace far exceeding that of other assassins. She consistently accomplished the seemingly impossible, regardless of the inherent difficulty or complexity of the mission. Her success rate was flawless, completely devoid of failure, and as a result, her fame and reputation grew exponentially with each passing day. The narrative then shifts to a scene featuring an elderly woman and a younger woman with striking black hair, who is revealed to be our protagonist, Yuyeon. Our female lead instructs the older woman, presumably her granny Kwok, to perform a specific action. The older woman reacts by holding her nose and frowning, commenting on the younger woman's strong smell of alcohol, indicating a recent indulgence. The older woman then begins to list crucial details related to an assignment: the deadline, the initial deposit, the remaining balance, the target's personal information, and the client's preferred method of eliminating the target. Granny Kwok confirms that all this information is meticulously detailed within the contract, adding that it is not unusual to go undercover, in this instance, as a new bride to gain access to the target. However, our female lead expresses her concern, stating that the problem lies specifically with the method of killing. Granny Kwok reveals the unusual and perhaps challenging stipulation: Yuyeon must assassinate the target through coition, acknowledging that this particular method might prove difficult even for someone as skilled as her. Our protagonist runs a hand distractedly through her hair, exclaiming in disbelief, "Death by sex? That's absurd." Granny Kwok counters by suggesting that all matters ultimately relate to the heart, and there are numerous ways to stop one. She playfully suggests a scenario where Yuyeon might induce her target to choke himself by luring him into a novel position, then abruptly stops herself, remarking that she has perhaps spoken too freely, a playful glint in her eyes as she does so. Our protagonist sighs, her mind preoccupied. She reflects on her excessive drinking the previous night, a behavior uncharacteristic of her disciplined nature. She recalls being at a crowded bar, wanting to finish her meal quickly and leave, when a man approached her and asked to join her. She instinctively observes his attire, noting that he appeared to be a man of significant wealth and influence. A fleeting thought crosses her mind. Could he have drugged her food? She quickly dismisses the idea, reasoning that an assassin of her caliber would undoubtedly have detected such an attempt. Granny Kwok then mentions the Ju family of Wolju, commenting on their apparent wealth based on the substantial deposit they had made for the assassination. Our protagonist groans, her headache intensifying, and explains that her concern extends beyond her hangover. The clients are not only wealthy, but also intelligent. They strategically delivered the deposit to Cheonwajang instead of directly to her. Cheonwajang, she explains, is the establishment that the former assassins of Baekwajang opened after its closure, implying a potential for complications or reputation damage if she doesn't retrieve the payment. Granny Kwok acknowledges this, but senses that something else is troubling Yihyeon, beyond the fact that she accepted a contract while under the influence of alcohol. Granny reminds her of her love for money, suggesting that the significant sum should have motivated her to begin the assignment immediately, enough to secure her financial future. Our protagonist reveals the underlying cause of her unease, stating that she feels as though she has been bewitched by a fox, an idiom suggesting a sense of being deceived or manipulated. When she inquired with the owner of the bar about the man who had approached her, the owner reacted with fear and denied her presence, asking if she was sure she had come to their bar, insisting she must be mistaken. Yihyeon senses the owner's genuine ignorance, yet the memory of the large group of people who arrived at the bar remains vivid. Adding to the mystery, there is no record of her order in the bar's ledger, and no one seems to remember seeing her there the previous night. Resigned, she glances at a red card, noting the deposit of 10,000 yang and a remaining balance twice that amount, totaling a significant 30,000 yang. Despite the vaguely unsettling nature of the situation, she concludes that the substantial payment is simply too lucrative to decline. The scene then shifts to a group of people engaged in hushed conversation. One asks if they know which house the bride belongs to. Another replies that they heard she is from outside the city, perhaps even someone from the capital, implying a person of some importance. A third speculates that she must be from a noble house, considering she is marrying the head of the esteemed Ju family. They then try to recall her name, finally identifying the groom as Ju Yihwi, the head of the Ju family, whom she is scheduled to marry that very day. We then see our protagonist inside a lavishly decorated carriage, being transported towards a grand and imposing residence. Upon arriving at the foyer of the magnificent house, one of the male servants respectfully lifts her up and carries her inside on his back, highlighting her perceived status or perhaps her current state of inebriation. An intriguing detail is revealed. The heads of the Ju family are twins, meaning there are two individuals holding the position of head. The older twin is Ju Yihyeon, while the younger twin is Ju Yihwi. The very man Yihyeon has been contracted to kill through coitus. It is mentioned that while Yihyeon handles all the public affairs and responsibilities of their position, Yihwi remains secluded within the confines of their home. Notably, no one has ever seen the twins together, and rumors suggest a strained relationship between them, leading to the speculation that the older brother might desire the elimination of his younger sibling. As the servants gently place Yihyeon on the ground, one of them advises her to watch her step, perhaps a subtle commentary on her earlier state. The narrative then explains the urgency of the situation, stating that this is why they are holding this shotgun wedding at noon, an arranged marriage under pressure. While the groom is presumably still sleeping, Yihyeon reflects on the necessity of marrying him to gain access to his bedchambers, but the bizarre method of assassination, death by coition, continues to perplex her. The scene shifts again to the wedding ceremony. Someone formally pronounces them man and wife. We then see our protagonist walking behind a man, presumably a guide within the vast residence. She internally comments on the unusual silence within the estate, despite the presence of 80 people. A servant bows respectfully before her and informs her that she may enter, as the Lord is awaiting her. She repeats the title, the Lord, and the servant confirms, yes, Lord Yihyeon. Yihyeon realizes that she is finally about to meet her client, and thankfully she is now sober. The sound of her heels clicking against the polished floor echoes as she walks further into the residence. A deep male voice speaks, stating that there are no enforced rules within his chambers, and therefore she may lower her fan, suggesting a formal or perhaps secretive encounter. The voice then instructs her to come closer. She complies, approaching a bed that is enclosed by heavy curtains. She parts the curtains and briefly surveys the interior of the bedchamber. Suddenly, she hears the voice again, this time seemingly behind her, and she realizes that the speaker must be positioned behind her. The voice remarks, unlike Yihyeon was clean, implying a contrast between her and someone else, perhaps another operative or individual. She turns to face the speaker and replies matter-of-factly, "Of course. I needed an identity with which I could live with my head held high during the day," suggesting her need for a respectable facade to conceal her true profession. The man, presumably Yihyeon, responds, "I see, quite reasonable. Then you shouldn't raise Yui's suspicion, at least for the first few weeks. He will find out who you are sooner or later." With unwavering confidence, she declares, "I'll kill him before then." The man laughs, finding her certainty amusing, and poses a question. "You seem so sure of yourself. I do have one question. How well do you endure fear?" She counters with a question of her own. "Are you asking if I can control my fear?" He confirms, yes. A flashback occurs in Yuyeon's mind. She remembers the owner of Baekwajang during her training, telling her that if she refused to reveal her greatest fear, he would cruelly cut off one of her fingers, as well as a finger of a colleague, demonstrating the brutal nature of her upbringing. The man, Yihyeon, steps through the parted curtains and prompts her with a simple, "And?" Her internal monologue reveals her perception of him. He walks like a ghost, suggesting an eerie or unsettling presence. She then replies to his earlier question, "I told him that I poisoned his daughter, so what more do you want to know? My fears or the location of the cure?" He then asks a pointed question, "Did the leader of the assassin house choose the cure?" She confirms, "Yes. If he hadn't, I would have died on the spot," highlighting the perilous nature of her past missions and her reliance on the leader of Baekwajang. He smirks, a knowing expression on his face, and says that he sees, implying he understands the implications of her statement. He then summarizes her position. "So you're telling me no one knows your true fears, that you'll complete the mission on your own, and that I shouldn't ask about," leaving the sentence unfinished, suggesting he understands her self-reliance and the boundaries of their professional relationship, her fears either. He looks at her with respect and says that he likes her guts. The man remarked on her apparent fearlessness, expressing his hope that she would maintain such boldness regardless of the challenges she might encounter in the future, addressing her as sister-in-law. Her eyes widened in surprise and perhaps alarm as she noticed a subtle yet distinct change in his features. He then offered to share a secure location where she could hide from Yihwi, suggesting that his brother might become enraged and attempt to find her when night fell. She was internally perplexed by this sudden shift in demeanor and information. He proceeded to explain that Yihwi had lived a rather dissolute and extravagant life, and consequently few individuals could genuinely capture his interest. Therefore, he declared his intention to personally instruct her before she would lie with his brother, causing her eyes to open wider in surprise and perhaps a dawning understanding. He stated that he would reveal to her precisely what Yihwi liked, ensuring she would learn every minute detail and preference. The scene then transitioned to them sharing a meal. He gracefully poured tea for her, while she internally questioned the strange occurrence she had just witnessed, wondering if some sort of hallucinogenic substance had been applied to her fan. However, she pondered the motive behind such an action, questioning the purpose of trying to frighten her. He then announced his intention to teach her the rules of the household, given that she would be residing there for an extended period. Firstly, he instructed her to return to Jongwadang, her designated chambers, before the sun set. If she was unfamiliar with the way, she should simply ask any of the people around her, and they would readily guide her. With a polite smile, she raised a finger and playfully suggested that she could guess the next rule. She should emerge from her chambers before the sun rises. He responded with an impressed correct, acknowledging her quick understanding. He then cautioned her that his brother Yihwi might attempt to lure her out with deceptive words, and she should not succumb to his sweet lies. He took a sip of his tea, pausing as she inquired about the potential consequences of inadvertently breaking the rules, suggesting scenarios such as getting delayed elsewhere or encountering an unexpected storm. Abruptly, he dropped his teacup, his demeanor shifting as he stated firmly that there would be no storms during the daytime, emphasizing the peaceful nature of Wolju during those hours. She internally noted his confident tone, as if he possessed some control over the weather itself. He then idly played with the rim of his now-fallen cup and added another crucial rule. She was strictly forbidden from leaving the residence before completing her mission without his explicit permission. He further informed her that there would be other inhabitants within the house at night, individuals she would not encounter during the day. At that time, she was instructed to conceal herself within a coffin located in Ilwujung of the East Wing, and, under no circumstances, was she to make eye contact with anyone. A visible bead of sweat trickled down her temple as she exclaimed, "Wait, a coffin? A coffin for bodies?" He calmly sipped his tea and suggested that perhaps she could use the coffin for repentance until sunrise. She internally questioned the peculiar presence of a coffin within his home in the first place. He continued, stating that she must absolutely never venture to Wolwjeon in the West Wing, reiterating that these were the inviolable rules she must abide by, concluding his explanation. She thought to herself that, as she had anticipated, the substantial sum of 30,000 yang would indeed come with its share of complications. Now that he had finished explaining the rules, she considered whether she should inquire about the strange vision or sensation she had experienced earlier. She watched him casually eat a fortune cookie, her mind racing, wondering if his lips would unnervingly stretch across his face as they had before. He suddenly addressed her, stating with a hint of authority that no one in this residence dared to stare directly at him. She quickly apologized if she had inadvertently offended him. He waved off her apology, saying it was fine, just then paused, seemingly searching for the right words. He then introduced himself formally as Yihyeon, looking somewhat impressed by her composure. He chuckled softly and clarified the appropriate forms of address for his brother, her intended target. She could call him husband, her lord, or any similar respectful title, but never under any circumstances was she to call him by his given name. She internally labeled him as pretty twisted, finding his demeanor and the situation increasingly bizarre. He then posed a rather intimate and probing question, asking if she was typically reserved during intercourse. Maintaining a carefully constructed false smile, she feigned confusion and asked, "Pardon?" He elaborated, mentioning one of his brother's particular preferences and stating that Yihwi would undoubtedly know if she was merely pretending. She internally grappled with how she was supposed to answer such a deeply personal and unusual question in this context. He dismissed her need to answer immediately, stating that they would know in due time and reminding her once more not to forget to return to her chambers before sunset. Suddenly, the scene shifted, and she found herself in an unfamiliar location. Huh? How did she get here? She wondered aloud. She then noticed a map clutched in her hand and exclaimed, "A map of the residence? When did she receive this?" As she examined the map, she muttered to herself, echoing her earlier sentiment, that she felt as though she had been bewitched by a fox, a sense of disorientation and manipulation washing over her. Grumbling to herself, she continued her internal monologue, questioning the original agreement. Wasn't the deal just to kill him? What does it matter if she feels pleasured too? She sighed, acknowledging the undeniably strange nature of the house and the entire situation. She then turned to the three women dressed in green who were standing silently behind her and stated her intention to take a walk, to which they responded in unison with a polite chorus of course. She reflected on the fact that no one had prevented her from exploring the grounds on her wedding day, yet everyone she encountered wore smiles that seemed artificial, like carefully crafted masks. A shiver ran down her spine as she reminded herself not to lower her guard simply because it was daytime, sensing an underlying unease. Her immediate instinct was to get away from this unsettling place. She then exclaimed, "Huh?" noticing that she had inexplicably jumped over a high wall. She jumped again, and with growing frustration she asked, "Again? Why does she keep ending up back at the house?" It then dawned on her, the chilling reminder of one of Yihyeon's rules. She could not leave the residence before completing her mission without his explicit permission. She swore under her breath, the realization of her confinement sinking in. Finally, she collapsed onto the bed in her chambers, a picture of exhaustion and defeat. She failed to get out in the end. She thought dejectedly. She had repeatedly found herself back inside the residence, even after physically stepping out through the main gates, as if an invisible force was preventing her departure. She called out to a nearby figure, "Hello? Can you hear me?" but received no response. She had also called out to people outside the walls, but again there was only silence. She wondered if it was some sort of elaborate illusion, unable to comprehend the phenomenon. Should she attempt to escape again now that it was dark? She reasoned that it was probably unwise, considering it was her first night in this strange place. She decided to stay inside for now, especially since the bed was surprisingly comfortable. She turned onto her side, a small comfort in the midst of the bizarre circumstances. She mused that she might never again have the opportunity to sleep in such a luxurious bed, or to partake in the daily feasts she had observed. Money is the best, she thought, a pragmatic consideration even in her bewildered state. As she began to drift off to sleep, a figure entered her room, casting a long shadow over her. With a start, she recognized the person standing over her. It was Seol Yuyeon herself. He says that he wonders if she is as beautiful as her name is. Come out this instant if she doesn't want her face to be ripped to shreds. She evens her breathing and thinks, come out? But isn't he standing behind him? Next thing, she swipes a knife in the air and sees that she's alone. Then she notices the presence of a table for two with a candle on it, with a red cloth covering the table. The smell of blood, it's the same odor she smelled when Yihyeon's face changed. Someone said she should come out, dear bride. It's only natural to see her groom on the night of the wedding. She sassy groom. He says, or perhaps she doesn't know who her groom is seeing. She had such a quick shotgun wedding. Is that it? She thinks that he sounds exactly like Yihyeon. She says that she already know who her groom is. He says she does? She's better off than him then, because though he didn't know until he came out of his chambers after noticing the wedding decorations scattered around the household, he came to the realization that it was all a terrible prank orchestrated by Yihyeon. That damn fox. Not only did he decide for him that he is to get married, but he decides to tell everyone else except him. The younger twin fumes at his brother. She gets up from the bed and lands on her tiptoes. The groom tells her that he doesn't know what that sly man is trying to achieve by doing this. He will let her go if she comes out. She raises a brow as thinks, yeah, she's heard that before. She opens the door slowly and a blade comes through, and she closes the door to prevent the blade from passing through. She uses the reflection of the ball day to check and sees no one and wonders, where did he go? Then she hears him says, so she refused to come out? She should just know that she's digging her own grave. He understand that she's scared, but still an answer would be nice. His dear bride. She thinks that he doesn't know she opened the door? She glances around and wonders what's going on. Then she hears him say that she should come out if she knows what's good for her. She wonders why does he keep threatening her when he could just come in himself. She smiles and thinks that he really can't step foot in Jongwadang. She yawns and says sorry, but she needs to get some sleep. He should get some shut-eye too, my lord. Someone says Yihyeon and she hushes him. She wonders if he has given up. Is he under some sort of spell now? She's already getting used to spells, illusions, and whatnot. She was made for this. She thinks that they should get some sleep now and think about all of this more tomorrow. Our girl sleeps. Then we see a shadowy male figure. The one who reigns over the Knights of Wolju is the fox deity with 9 tails that roar like fire. Even the most virtuous in the heavens beware of this deity. Disguised as a fox, he killed the god of the mountains and fashioned his armor out of 5 serpents he slayed all by himself. We see the younger twin say how dare these two insult him. He tells the trembling servants to burn everything that was used at the wedding. They bow and says, yes, master. He thinks that it's not enough that Yihyeon makes a fool out of him, but he really thinks that he'd marry a mere human. What is this conniving man thinking? Surely keeping this Yihyeon in Jongwadang, a place in which he cannot step foot, is just a temporary measure. There are not many humans who would obey the order to stay in their chambers at night. The girl would probably cave and dies within just a few days. He thinks so. Why did his virtuous brother bring a human into play when he hates bloodshed? He shall torment her until she begs for death, then slay her in front of his brother. He tells a person dressed in black and says they should gather everything they can on the human names Seol Yuyeon, her hometown, family, friends, neighbors, and date of birth. Everything. He shall try to fix his ruined mood now. He wonders what spectacle his dear brother would despise the most. Oh, he then says that they should light the aphrodisiac in the banquet hall. They should put the concubines inside, and when they are consumed by their desire, they should send in the sinners. They must be men taken from Giju. They should make them take pills as they cannot be affected by the aphrodisiac. He thinks that they are sleff-righteous men like Yihyeon. Just because she acts like a virtuose, being of the heavens, doesn't mean they are one. The heaven will never let them in because they would have accepted him all along with them, and those shrew beings would never do such a thing. Then he says, so you failed to be bewitched by a fox? Then someone shouts and insults humans. If they refuse to be possessed, then they will be taken as is. The concubines tell the men to do as they wish. The younger twin looks happy at his work. One of the men, desperate to escape the horrific scene unfolding before him, pleaded for death rather than to continue participating in the unspeakable acts orchestrated by the younger twin, and his wish was chillingly granted with swift finality. The younger twin, observing the aftermath with a detached air, remarked that spectacles such as these weren't entirely unpleasant to witness every now and then, a disturbing testament to his callous nature. Another man, driven by a primal urge to survive, made a frantic attempt to flee the gruesome tableau, only to be brutally apprehended and dragged back into the nightmare. The younger twin then mused aloud, his thoughts taking a disturbingly sensual turn, as he wondered what it would feel like to watch the first rays of dawn illuminate the face of his bride, stained with blood and streaked with tears, while he was intimately connected with her. A cunning glint entered his eyes as he pondered if ensuring his virtuous brother witnessed this depraved spectacle would finally reveal the true extent of Yihyeon's enigmatic schemes and motivations. A wide, unsettling grin spread across his face as he calmly sipped his tea, seemingly unfazed by the carnage surrounding him. His next act was equally macabre. He proceeded to write a letter, the words formed with the very blood of his recently deceased victims, and then carelessly dropped the crimson missive onto the floor beside the grand staircase where he sat, a silent, gruesome invitation. A flicker of anticipation crossed his features as he wondered if Yihyeon, the unexpected interloper in his carefully constructed world, was yet awake and aware of the escalating chaos. He harbored a dark hope that his dear brother would thoroughly appreciate the uniquely disturbing gift he had so meticulously prepared for him. As the first light of the rising sun began to filter through the windows, casting long, eerie shadows across the blood-stained scene, the older twin Yihyeon entered the banquet hall. His eyes surveyed the horrifying tableau of lifeless bodies strewn across the floor, a silent testament to unimaginable suffering, and he let out a long, weary sigh, filled with profound pity for the departed souls. He observed the ghastly pallor of their skin, noting that they had been completely drained of their vital life essence in their final moments. Amidst the carnage, one concubine, her eyes glazed with a desperate longing, reached out and grabbed his arm, pleading with him to lie with her, her voice a mere whisper of insatiable need. Yihyeon, his expression a mask of sorrowful compassion, gently cupped her face in his hands, his gaze filled with empathy, before tenderly gathering her frail body into his arms and carrying her away from the scene of horror. As he turned to leave, his eyes caught sight of a letter lying on the floor, its crimson hue stark against the pale stone. He bent down and carefully picked up the blood-stained missive, his brow furrowed in concern as he began to read its disturbing contents. He read the words aloud, his voice tinged with disbelief and a growing sense of dread. A chance to redeem himself? Finish what he started before the sun sets today. That is the only way you can save Seol Yuyeon. A flicker of anger crossed his face as he considered the sender's likely deceitful intentions. Why does he lie when he has no intention of letting her live? Yihwi will cruelly torture Yihyeon and make him watch. This here is just the start, making a mess of the banquet hall as if in protest. His gaze hardened. He instructed another servant, his voice firm, to clean this up. "Yes, my lord," the servant bowed and said, "I love this tranquil time of day when all beings arise from their slumber. If only he could live the next 1,000 years in peace like this. Should he brew some tea with the morning dew, or shall he make it with the first snow that falls on the plum blossom petals? Time will certainly fly if he invites another deity over to play Go with him." He observed the serene beauty of the early morning, a stark contrast to the brutality he had just witnessed. He wishes to govern Wolju without any trouble, but this cannot happen with Yihwi on the loose. He plans to carry out mass slaughter this winter merely because he is bored. As the deity and ruler of Wolju, he can't let that happen. He slips off his ornate robe, the weight of his responsibilities settling upon him. And that's why he's decided to kill him. It's best for the best. It had to happen sooner or later. He walked towards a pool of water, his thoughts turning to the unexpected guest in his household. He's sure his younger brother paid her a visit last night, and yet she still hasn't demanded out of the contract. She's as gutsy and money-hungry as the rumors say. 30,000 yang is nothing if it means the end of her brother. Meanwhile, in her secluded chambers, Seol Yuyeon awoke bright and chirpy, seemingly unfazed by the unsettling events of the previous night. She sat at the table with a cheerful smile gracing her lips. Her ladies-in-waiting, observing her early rise, commented on her punctuality. "Yes," she replied, "I've always had a habit of waking up early to read." One of the attendants presented her with a book, its title emblazoned with the provocative words Killer Kama Sutra. They informed her that her breakfast would be brought in shortly. Another lady-in-waiting relayed a message, stating that the older twin, Lord Yihyeon, wished to see her after she had finished her meal, and they would assist her in preparing for the meeting. She nodded in agreement, saying, "All right." Her thoughts then drifted back to her mission, a pragmatic and somewhat violent plan forming in her mind. She thinks that maybe having Yihwi experience a premature cardiac arrest during their intimate encounter would be an efficient way to fulfill the contract. She'll make him drink first, perhaps something potent, then they'll engage in a playful chase, and she'll strike when he's breathless and vulnerable. Or perhaps she could even use his own weight against him, swinging him through the air by his waist until his heart gives out. Her confidence in her abilities remained unwavering. She hasn't failed to kill a single target so far. She mentally repeated his name, a cold determination settling in her eyes. She agrees that she doesn't care if he's a ghost or a human. She'll make his heart stop and get that 30,000 yang. She'll do whatever it takes. One of the maids, overhearing her muttered plans, asked in confusion, "Pardon?" Yuyeon quickly recovered, offering a plausible explanation. She'll borrow Lord Yihyeon's book. She saw his library yesterday. It seems as though he enjoys reading. The women exchanged amused glances, unaware of the deadly intent hidden beneath her seemingly innocent request, as Yuyeon internally smirked, confident in her impending success. 30,000 yang is hers, she thought with a resolute certainty. We see our girl getting pampered by her maids, their gentle hands meticulously combing through her hair and carefully shaping her nails. They present her with a polished mirror, their faces beaming with satisfaction as they declare that she is all set. She delicately touches her face, marveling at her reflection and the undeniable beauty they have enhanced. A silent question forms in her mind as she wonders at the intricate styling they have achieved with her hair. The maids, their voices respectful and attentive, address her as Miss Seol, informing her that they shall now escort her to Lord Yihyeon, to which she replies with a casual assurance that she will be right there. A pragmatic thought crosses her mind, reminding herself that she shouldn't become too accustomed to such luxurious pampering. Well, it's nothing that a hefty sum of 30,000 yang can't eventually rectify, she muses. She gracefully follows the maids through the opulent corridors, a fleeting thought acknowledging that this must be what it feels like to be truly spoiled. However, she quickly suppresses any burgeoning sense of entitlement, firmly reminding herself that she is, first and foremost, an assassin, and one careless slip-up could have dire consequences. Another maid bows deeply as she approaches a set of imposing doors, smoothly sliding one open to announce to the older twin that their awaited heroine has arrived. With another deferential gesture, the maid indicates that she may now enter. A subtle sense of wonder washes over Yihyeon as she notices the second door silently glide open on its own. This grand manner never ceases to surprise her with its hidden mechanisms and understated grandeur. She parts a set of heavy curtains and steps into the room, her eyes immediately drawn to the figure seated on the bed. A fresh wave of curiosity washes over her as she wonders why he prefers to remain shrouded in such layers of fabric. Without hesitation, she moves to open the other set of curtains, seeking more light and a clearer view. She reflects on her initial encounter with Yihwi. She had quickly grasped the essence of his character. However, Yihyeon remains an enigma, his personality as layered and obscured as this very room with its multiple veils of curtains. While all a client truly owes her is monetary compensation, a professional courtesy, and perhaps a personal curiosity still compels her to seek a deeper explanation for the unusual circumstances surrounding this mission. We see the older twin, Yihyeon, sitting serenely on the edge of the bed as he offers a polite greeting. "Welcome, my sister-in-law," he says, his voice calm and measured. "I trust you enjoyed your first night here?" Yihyeon internally scoffs at the seemingly innocuous question, a silent thought acknowledging the chaotic events that had transpired. Maintaining a neutral expression, she replies, "There was a bit of a commotion outside my room, but I slept soundly." He responds with a quiet, "Good," though his next words carry a somber weight, "though I cannot say the same for those who died in the banquet hall." Yihyeon's brow furrows in surprise. "The banquet hall? People died there?" He confirms with a simple, "Yes, last night." He proceeds to explain, his tone matter of fact. "My brother is merely letting out his anger, since you refused to do what he wished. He lit an aphrodisiac and held quite a performance." Yihyeon's mind races, trying to reconcile the inappropriate nature of such an event with the grim consequence of death. Why would people die during such an inappropriate and abrupt event, she wonders aloud. Yihyeon offers a clinical explanation. One might surmise that they fornicated until their deaths. Yihyeon finds his casual delivery of such a morbid detail unsettling. "Does this happen often?" she asks, her voice betraying a hint of disbelief. He replies with a stark, "Yes, there was a river of blood. It was not a sight that should be seen first thing in the morning," he adds, idly playing with a length of white rope as he speaks. "The beloved of the deceased will never know the true nature of their deaths. We cannot let them know, and their bodies are not in a state to be seen by them." His tone shifts, a hint of weariness entering his voice. "My brother must stop killing the innocent, and killing him is the only way to stop him." Yihyeon, still grappling with the bizarre circumstances, questions, "But why should she kill him via these means?" Yihyeon's gaze becomes intense. His body can only die under that circumstance. Yihyeon's confusion deepens. "What's that supposed to mean?" He calls her name, his voice carrying a note of urgency. "Seol Yuyeon, is that more important than the considerable sum of money you will receive?" Yihyeon understands his unspoken message. He wants her to cease her questioning and simply fulfill her contracted duty. He pats the space beside him on the bed, inviting her closer. "Come here, and we should get right to your lessons." Yihyeon cautiously climbs onto the bed, and Yihyeon begins to instruct her in the subtle arts of captivating his younger brother's attention, his words painting a delicate yet potentially deadly performance. The maids had just completed their meticulous ministrations, their efforts leaving our protagonist feeling both physically refreshed and undeniably elegant. They presented her with a handheld mirror, their expressions radiating pride in their artistry, as they affirmed that she was now perfectly prepared. She delicately raised her hand to touch her cheek, her gaze lingering on the reflection, acknowledging the undeniable prettiness they had so expertly cultivated. A silent question danced in her mind as she pondered the intricate techniques they had employed to achieve such a captivating hairstyle. The maids, their voices imbued with a respectful formality, addressed her as Miss Seol, informing her that they were now ready to escort her to the presence of Lord Yihyeon, to which she responded with a casual yet acknowledging assurance that she would be with them momentarily. A pragmatic thought surfaced in her consciousness, a gentle reminder that she should not allow herself to become too accustomed to such lavish pampering and attention. After all, It was nothing that a substantial sum of 30,000 yang couldn't eventually rectify, she mused with a hint of her characteristic practicality. She gracefully followed the attentive maids through the seemingly endless corridors of the grand estate, a fleeting and somewhat bemused thought, acknowledging that this must be the very essence of being utterly spoiled. However, her inherent pragmatism quickly reasserted itself, and she firmly cautioned herself against allowing such unaccustomed indulgence to cloud her judgment. She was, at her core, an assassin, and even a momentary lapse in vigilance could prove irrevocably fatal. Another maid, her movements fluid and respectful, executed a deep bow as she approached a set of ornately carved doors, smoothly and silently sliding one open to announce to the waiting older twin that their anticipated heroine had finally arrived. With a further deferential gesture, the maid indicated that Miss Seol was now permitted to enter the room. A subtle sense of wonder, a recurring experience within this extraordinary manor, washed over Yihyeon as she observed the second door silently glide open, as if by an unseen hand. This place never ceased to amaze her with its hidden mechanisms and the seamless integration of technology and tradition. She parted the heavy, embroidered curtains that veiled the entrance and stepped into the room, her eyes immediately seeking out the figure of Lord Yihyeon seated on the bed. A fresh wave of curiosity and a hint of suspicion washed over her as she wondered at his continued preference for being shrouded in layers of fabric, a deliberate obscuring of himself from the world. Without hesitation, driven by an innate desire for clarity, she moved to open the remaining set of curtains, hoping to flood the room with more revealing light and gain a better understanding of the man she was contracted to manipulate. She reflected on her initial, rather straightforward assessment of Yihwi's character. His desires and motivations had been relatively transparent. However, Yihyeon remained an intricate puzzle, his true nature as layered and concealed as the very room she now occupied with its multiple veils of curtains. While the fundamental agreement of their arrangement was purely financial, a professional curiosity, perhaps even a nascent sense of personal involvement, compelled her to seek a more comprehensive explanation for the increasingly bizarre and dangerous circumstances surrounding this unusual mission. They conclude their lesson, the nuances of which leave a lingering impression on Yihyeon, a subtle disquiet beneath her professional exterior. Seeking a physical and perhaps metaphorical cleansing, she takes a shower, the warm water cascading over her skin, attempting to wash away not just the lingering touch, but also the unsettling implications of their intimate instruction. Emerging from the confines of her chambers, she walks out through a nearby gate, a barely perceptible tremor running through her body with each deliberate step. A faint unease settles within her as she realizes that she still feels the phantom sensations of their lesson, a persistent echo that defies the physical act of washing. The vivid memories of what had transpired resurface in her thoughts, and she internally commands herself to cease her mental replay, firmly asserting that she is not one to be easily swayed or enchanted, certainly not as if she had been bewitched by a fox. With a conscious effort, she attempts to redirect her mental focus, seeking a more neutral and less emotionally charged subject for contemplation. Her gaze then inadvertently lifts, and she notices a prominently displayed sign hanging above what appears to be another building. A flicker of avarice, a familiar motivator, crosses her eyes as she wonders if the material of the sign is genuine gold. Given the ostentation and grandeur of the estate, it probably is, she reasons, noting the sheer size and elaborate craftsmanship of the marker. A specific detail from her earlier conversation with the enigmatic older twin resurfaces in her memory. His explicit warning that there would be other inhabitants within the house during the night, individuals whom she would not encounter during the daylight hours. During that nocturnal period, she was strictly instructed to conceal herself within a coffin located in Ilwujeon of the East Wing, and under no circumstances was she to make eye contact with any of these unseen residents. Her hand instinctively reaches out, her fingers brushing against the cool metal of the gate before her, a sense of recognition dawning within her. This must be Ilwujeon, she thinks, observing that it appears to be a relatively normal, albeit somewhat imposing, building. She attempts to push the heavy gate open, expecting it to yield, but it remains stubbornly sealed, resisting her efforts. A low grumble of frustration escapes her lips as she mutters to herself that it simply won't budge, its mechanism apparently locked or jammed. Suddenly, a polite and slightly questioning voice calls out from behind her. "Miss Seol? Is something the matter?" She turns to see a male maid approaching her with a concerned expression, his brow slightly furrowed. A subtle observation, one that had previously escaped her notice, now registers in her mind. Come to think of it, none of the servants here have addressed her as madam, a customary title one might anticipate for a newlywed within such a traditional setting. The servant, seemingly unaware of her internal musings and the subtle social dynamics at play, continues with a helpful tone. Great timing. Seizing the unexpected opportunity, Yihyeon inquires directly, her voice polite yet carrying an underlying hint of impatience. "Excuse me, but can you possibly open this door for me?" The servant swiftly obliged, opening the gate with an ease that made Yihyeon's previous efforts seem futile. As she stepped through, he offered a polite farewell, and she returned a brief thank you. Walking into the enclosed area, her eyes widened in surprise. "Wow, just how many coffins are there?" she thought, observing the neat rows of dark, rectangular shapes lining the space. She instinctively wiped her hand and then examined her palm, noting the absence of any dust. No dust, they must clean them every day, she concluded. Curiosity piqued, she cautiously opened one of the coffins and then frowned in confusion. "Huh? Are these cushions?" she wondered, her gaze taking in the soft, padded lining. She opened another and then another, her frown deepening. She thought that they're all things you can sit or lie down on, not at all what she had expected. Even with every lantern in the area lit, the illumination remained somewhat subdued, casting long shadows and creating an eerie ambiance. "It's just barely enough light to locate them," she noted. Counting them quickly, she arrived at a total of 79 coffins. Granny Kwok had mentioned that a total of 80 people lived here, counting the Lord, so it made sense that there were 79 individual sleeping spaces. They're not used to store bodies. It's almost as if they're used for sleeping, she mused, the purpose of these morbid-looking beds remaining unclear. She emerged from Ilwoojeon and informed the waiting servant that she was done looking, offering him another brief thank you. Later, back in her room the previous night, the servants had offered their customary greeting before retiring to their own chambers. But she hadn't actually noticed them leave. If Ilwoojeon was indeed a place for them to sleep, then how had they departed so silently? And why the peculiar choice of coffins instead of conventional beds? She glanced at the servant who had opened the gate for her, noticing that he still wore the same fixed smile. She wondered why he kept smiling at her. It was the same unnerving smile that adorned the faces of all the servants in this house. It creeps her out every time she sees it. Is he going to report everything she does to our guy? No, she had a growing feeling that he already knew everything that transpired within these walls. From the moment she signed the contract until now, she felt like she was constantly in the palm of his hand, every action observed and anticipated. The scene shifted to her room, where a delicate dresser stood adorned with a vase filled with vibrant purple flowers. The maid attending her announced, "Miss Seol, they will be taking their leave. Have a good night," and Yihyeon offered a polite wave and a good night in return. The maids quietly closed the door, leaving her alone in the room. A moment later, she stepped out of her room, a sense of unease washing over her as she realized that the maids were already gone. She wondered, where did they go to? Underground? Her gaze fell to the polished floorboards, as if seeking a hidden passage. Based on the location of the maids' rooms and the direction of the pathway, she felt a growing certainty that they were heading toward Ilwoojeon. Suddenly, she overheard a hushed conversation nearby. Someone said to her that she shouldn't be so noisy if she's going to arrive so late. She quickly realized that the words weren't directed at her or meant for her ears. It was a private exchange. Unlike someone stationed at Jangwadang, they had to clean the banquet hall since sunup. She could still detect the lingering stench, no matter how many times she washed her hair. Another voice retorted, Stop whining. It's not like they were the ones who made that mess. Shh. Someone might hear them. The first voice complained of the persistent stink, adding with a hint of dark humor that they should be grateful she hadn't eaten the intestines left on the ground. A disgusted thought crossed Yihyeon's mind. Why would she even eat that? She decided it would be best to wait until things quieted down before venturing further. Continuing to move stealthily, she tiptoed down the hallway, but the old floorboards creaked loudly beneath her feet, betraying her presence. A thought occurred to her. She shouldn't just open any random coffin in Ilwujeon. Such an action might be reckless and could potentially expose her. However, her curiosity proved too strong to resist, and she cautiously knocked on the lid of the nearest coffin. A gruff voice from within responded, "Beat it." Undeterred, she knocked on another coffin, but this time she heard no response. Slowly, she opened the lid and peered inside, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of a creature peacefully sleeping within. She blinked, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. A squirrel? Then she moved to another coffin and opened it, revealing a coiled snake nestled within. "Whoa," she exclaimed softly. She thought it was awake for a second, her hand instinctively recoiling. A bizarre thought took root in her mind. She wondered if all 79 coffins were like this, each housing some strange animal. She rubbed her temples, a sense of bewilderment washing over her. Let her get this straight, she thought. The servants of the Jew family household sleep in coffins? She had followed the maids to confirm this, and when she opens the coffins, she finds strange animals that she's never seen before. Beasts that disguise themselves as humans during the day and return to their original forms at night. Stories that only exist in fairy tales. A professional assassin shouldn't be so quick to believe something so far-fetched. But Yihyeon should already know about this, given his position. She decided it was best to retreat for now and process this bewildering information. As she turned to leave, she noticed a new coffin that hadn't been there this afternoon, seemingly appearing out of nowhere. As she approached it, a folded letter dropped silently to her feet. She picked it up and unfolded it, her eyes scanning the handwritten script. It read, Seol Yuyeon, 5th year of Hyeowon, 1st day of September, 3 a.m., her name and her exact date and time of birth. A chill ran down her spine. This personal information, seemingly known only to her and perhaps her granny Kwok, had somehow found its way here, deepening the mystery of this unsettling place. She jolts back in fear and shouts, "Ah!" She falls back on the floor, and he looks down at her, asking if she is a new rat. She tells herself to remain calm, her heart pounding in her chest. She realizes that he recognizes her voice but not her appearance. If she speaks in a feeble tone, he might not make the connection. She bows her head low and tells him, "Thank you for gracing her with your presence, Lord Yihwi. She is the lady's servant and guard." "Lady? So he means Seol Yuyeon?" She confirms with a submissive yes. He asks her if our girl hired her. She replies no, explaining that she followed Lady Yihyeon from Hyungju. He remarks that he heard Yihyeon is an orphan, questioning how she could have a servant when she has no relatives to speak of. Well, given her upbringing, he can imagine she's had the means to hire her own servant, he concedes. He offers a hand to help her up, saying that she may stand. She wonders why he is suddenly acting so polite and solicitous. He then inquires how long she has served the lady in question. She replies, "Not very long, just for about 6 years, Lord Yihwi." He observes that 6 years is a significant span in human terms. Since Yihyeon is 25, that means she started serving her when she was 19, yes? She addresses him as Lord and agrees. He asks if Yihyeon instructed her to check what's happening outside. Keeping her gaze fixed downward, she nods. He then asks if her mistress treats her fairly, and she assures him, yes, very much so. She must hold her dear, he muses aloud before asking if she thinks Yihyeon is a good person. She affirms with a simple yes. He grins a subtle, unsettling expression. He says that, regardless of the complicated state of affairs among those in power, he hopes she stays safe. Doesn't she agree? He leans closer, cupping her face in his hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. Then his grip tightens menacingly around her neck, and he whispers, "You better do as I say, understand?" Whether she's a guard skilled with a sword or not, she's still at the bottom of the food chain in this estate. She gasps, saying that she can't breathe. She manages to choke out a "Yes, my lord." He releases her, and she bends over, coughing and inhaling deeply, trying to regain her breath. A fierce resolve hardens within her. He should just wait, she thinks. She's coming to kill him soon enough. He instructs her to come to him every night and report back about what happens during the daytime. Once he sees she's unharmed despite roaming about daily, he believes Yihyeon will let her guard down, and that's when he will bring her out of Jungwadang. She asks if they will be able to go back to Yeongju if she does this. He assures her, of course, he won't let anyone lay a finger on her. He will protect her. Yeah, right. She thinks sarcastically. He has no intention of protecting anyone but himself. He then asks her what her name is. She replies that she doesn't have one. Lord Yihwi, she is but a lowly servant. He rubs his chin thoughtfully and says then he shall call her Soseo. She forces a smile, beaming and saying thank you. It's beautiful. Soseo, small rat? She thinks derisively. Naming people half-heartedly just because it's not his own name, classic Yihwi. She walks away, letting out a quiet sigh. She survived for today, she thinks aloud, but now she has to face Yihwi every night. She resolves to delay these nightly meetings for as long as possible. In another encounter, the younger brother's voice is sharp with displeasure. He instructed her to come during the night, yet she stands before him just before sunrise. Shall he take this insolence as a sign that she desires him to cut off her fingers? She shakes her head vehemently, looking down and saying not at all, her voice trembling slightly. He notices the rising sun, his brow furrowing in annoyance. Never mind, he tells her curtly, and she better not make the same mistake tonight. Yes, my lord, she replies quickly, and he shoos her away, telling her to be gone. As she walks away, she thinks that, of course, she will not truly be gone. There's something decidedly odd about these brothers. One appears only during the day, the other only at night. It's not normal that she can only meet them at such specific, opposing times. Driven by a growing suspicion, she tiptoes quietly through the manor, thinking that she's going to see for herself what is truly going on. She cautiously opens a door and sees the younger twin sitting on a low ledge, his gaze fixed on the horizon as the sun begins its ascent. She notices something extraordinary. As the sun's rays touch his face, his eyes flutter closed, and he seems to fall into a deep sleep. Then, in what appears to be the very next moment, he stirs, as if waking from a brief slumber. He then proceeds to redress himself, deliberately taking his belt and tying his hair in a style identical to that of the older twin. What in the world, she thinks, her mind reeling from the impossible scene she has just witnessed. The man then turns his head slightly to the side, and a voice, familiar yet subtly different, murmurs, "Yihyeon?" Unlike the virtuous beings of heaven, who are born immortal, beasts must train for hundreds or even thousands of years to become divine creatures. By overcoming this obstacle, they can ascend to become a deity, granting them the privilege of freely entering heaven. The twin house heads were the first deities born as beasts. Our girl says that, so they are twins as well as fox deities who have lived for 1,000 years, and they've shared bodies since birth. They've ruled the day while Yihwi reigned over the night for a millennium. He confirms with a simple correct. She responds with a somewhat odd, wow, that's amazing, it's a little late, but congratulations nonetheless. She then asks the crucial question, but how is she supposed to kill an immortal? And since they share a body with Yihwi, doesn't that mean he'd die if she kills him? He clarifies that it's not exactly that simple, stating that it's quite difficult to explain in concise terms. She sighs, a hint of resignation in her voice, and says, okay, fine. She won't pry further into the metaphysical complexities. Then she redirects him, asking how she should go about killing an immortal. He explains that both deities and the virtuous beings of the heavens are, by their very nature, immortal, but there is one way to end their existence. While the specific methods differ between deities and the heavenly beings, Yihwi can be killed through coitus, death. She realizes that this explains why the contract specified such a peculiar method. A fairy placed a curse on Yihwi 1,000 years ago. She sacrificed her own life, claiming it was the perfect way for a debauched being like him to die. Since then, he has become someone who can only die through death by copulation. She thinks that it's so obvious what happened, The younger twin probably broke the fairy's heart, a tale of ancient betrayal and lingering consequences. But will it even be possible to stop a deity's heart with that method, she wonders. He assures her that she can, and indeed she must. There is no one as perfectly suited for the job as her. Not even a fearless beast would have anything on her in this particular endeavor. He then begins to detail his younger twin's tastes and the ideal circumstances for her to finally spend her first night together with him. A deadly seduction disguised as intimacy. He says that he shall teach her everything she needs to know, and after she kills him, it will all be over. He will take care of what comes after, and she should rest assured that she will be safe. He slides a finger down the palm of her hand, a gesture both intimate and calculated, and asks, shall they do it? She, somewhat taken aback by the sudden intimacy, asks, here? He proceeds to elaborate on his brother's preferences, a clinical description of desire and vulnerability. The scene then shifts to depict them engaging in intimate acts, a stark contrast to the underlying intent of violence. Later we see the younger twin, his face contorted with rage, a vein throbbing prominently on his forehead. So Seo, welcome, he says, his voice dangerously low. Would she care to explain why she hasn't come to him for the past 4 days? She forces a shy smile, an act that seems to further enrage him, causing another vein to bulge on his temple. He asks her if she has a death wish. He explicitly told her to come every day. She offers a weak excuse, saying that she nodded off, her voice barely a whisper. She thinks to herself that she had no choice. She was utterly exhausted from his brother and his way with her all day. He draws his sword, the polished steel glinting menacingly in the light. Nod off, he repeats, the point of the blade hovering dangerously close to her throat. She nods off when she tends to the fire. She nods off when she listens to a boring lecture from the elderly. Is just fell asleep all she can say? She tenses, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. She attempts to placate him, saying, she looks up at him with what she hopes is an expression of contrition, and tells him thank you for his wise teachings. He sees she's never received a proper education. He throws the sword aside, the sound echoing harshly in the room, and demands to know if our girl, Yihyeon, did not get angry with her for her absence, and if that is all that happened. He sighs, rubbing his temples in frustration. Never mind, he says, she should tell him what happened during the last 4 days. Soon, his eyes widen in disbelief. What? His brother bedded the girl? He bedded a woman? Is this true? He demands confirmation, asking if she is sure about this. She affirms that yes, they are together for hours during the day. Lady Yihyeon reluctantly accepts his advances, as he insists that she cannot see him until she masters her technique. But Lord Yihyeon, she begins, then hesitates, covering her mouth as if embarrassed. The younger twin leans forward expectantly, his expression a mixture of curiosity and barely suppressed fury, and prompts her with a single word, yes? She continues, her voice low, and seems to be interested in her. She took a quick glimpse when they were together, and she trails off, feigning modesty. He presses her, his voice tight. And? Suddenly, a long, elegant tail emerges from his lower back, its fur shimmering with an unnatural light. He warns her that unless she wishes to be bewitched, she should lower her gaze because foxes instinctively seduce their prey, even unintentionally. He caresses her chin, his touch sending a shiver down her spine, and whispers, "So Seo, she should tell him what she saw. He's quite curious. Just what is Yihyeon trying to teach his bride?" She nods, her gaze fixed on the floor, and addresses him formally with his title. She thinks that perhaps now is a good time to tell him about the positions she came across in the technique book. She proceeds to describe some of the more unconventional bed positions, and he palms his forehead in disbelief, exclaiming, "The two really did this?" She confirms with a demure yes. Inwardly, she thinks that she's lying through her teeth, but she's going to do it with him too, eventually. He wonders aloud if his brother is finally going senile. She asks him, her tone carefully neutral, so what does he think? Doesn't he want to try it as well? He recoils, his face contorted in disgust. Of course not, he snaps. He's not a pervert like Yihyeon. Yeesh, she thinks, he doesn't have to yell at her. She decides that she needs to find another position to describe, one that might pique his interest without completely repulsing him. In the morning, our girl yawns, stretching languidly as she thinks that she's exhausted, having to meet both brothers every day. At least the older prince knows she's undercover as Soseo at night, she thinks, a small comfort in this bizarre situation. Suddenly she sees something whiz past her head, impacting the wall with a thud. She looks around, startled. "An arrow, in the middle of the day?" she exclaims. She cautiously approaches the projectile and sees a note attached to it. She opens it and reads the message aloud. To Yihyeon and Soseo, the servant, she will pay for deceiving Lord Yihwi. A cold dread washes over her. This is bad, she thinks. She shows the note to the older twin, her voice trembling slightly. This just flew at her. She thought she was safe during the day. Why is Yihwi's right-hand man roaming about when the sun is up? And what should she do now that his brother knows who she is? She was doing a good job. He even mentioned that time flew when he was with her. What should she do? She won't be able to lie with him at this rate. He responds, his tone surprisingly calm. No. This may actually be the perfect time to do so. We see our girl, Seol Yuyeon, standing outside a traditional-looking house, her expression thoughtful and tinged with a hint of resignation. She thinks to herself that he, meaning the volatile younger twin Yihwi, would have inevitably discovered her deception sooner or later. The scene transitions to a conversation with the older twin, Yihyeon, who calmly states that Yuyeon had mentioned growing accustomed to their conversations. He surmises that Yihwi most likely developed a similar, perhaps unsettlingly comfortable, feeling towards her. Yuyeon looks at Yihyeon, her brow furrowed in contemplation, and asks with genuine curiosity, "But why?" Yihyeon explains, his voice measured, that precisely because Yihwi found a sense of ease in her presence, he felt compelled to test the authenticity of her persona. He needed to ascertain whether he could truly trust her, a fundamental aspect of his deeply suspicious nature. She thinks to herself, a wry smile touching her lips, that he suspects the very person he likes. He certainly has some serious trust issues, a significant character flaw in someone so powerful. Yihyeon reassures her, his gaze steady, that Yihwi will not kill her. He guarantees it, emphasizing that she has succeeded in an unprecedented feat, deceiving his paranoid brother and even prompting him to harbor positive doubts. This wavering, this internal conflict within Yihwi, is a stage no one else has ever been able to reach with him, except for her unique and perhaps reckless approach. Yihyeon reiterates that this very progress is why he remains confident that his younger twin will ultimately refrain from taking her life. Returning to the present moment, Yihyeon stands before the imposing gate of Ilwujeon, her gaze fixed on the intricate carvings. A silent debate rages within her. Can she truly trust the words of the enigmatic Yihyeon? With a deep breath, she pushes open the heavy gate and steps inside, a subtle sigh of relief escaping her lips. She announces her arrival into the dimly lit interior, stating simply that she's coming in. As she ventures further into the darkness, her eyes struggle to adjust to the lack of light. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoes from the depths of the room, sending a shiver of apprehension down her spine. Her eyes remain fixed on the impenetrable darkness, her senses on high alert. Gradually, two luminous eyes materialize within the gloom, their shape distinctly almond-like and their color a piercing obsidian. Then, as if a veil has been lifted, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through the room, momentarily clearing the oppressive darkness. Yihyeon instinctively raises her arm to shield her face, her brow furrowing in a mixture of surprise and consternation. Standing before her, its 9 magnificent tails swaying gently, is the legendary fox deity, his gaze fixed upon her with an undeniable lustful intensity. A silent plea forms in her mind. Please, they should tell her that it's not true. Why isn't he in his human form? Does she truly have to spend their first night together in this decidedly non-human manner? The fox, his voice a low growl laced with fury, finally speaks. It is infuriating enough that his own brother attempted to trick him with this elaborate charade, but to think that even a mere human had the audacity to lie to his very face, to play him for a fool. With a swift, deliberate movement, he uses one of his razor-sharp claws to viciously tear through the sturdy floorboards, the sound echoing ominously in the enclosed space. Then, with another flick of his wrist, he shreds the delicate trains of her elegant gown. Yihyeon, her voice tinged with a desperate urgency, exclaims that she didn't want to do it, he knows. But the older twin had informed her of the entire situation after the wedding ceremony, explaining the rather unflattering reason why his brother needed a bride, because he was, in Yihyeon's words, too ugly to bear. The fox's long, sharp finger screeches against the stone floor, a sound that sets her teeth on edge. Yihyeon had further elaborated that it was exceedingly difficult to find him a willing bride within the confines of Wolju itself. The fox's anger intensifies, his tails twitching agitatedly. He demands to know if she, hailing from Yeongju, has somehow managed to live her entire life in complete isolation. The reputation of the Ju family from Wolju extends far beyond their borders, reaching even the distant capital. So how is it possible that someone from a neighboring city like her remains utterly ignorant of the infamous twin brothers? Yuyeon, adopting a posture of humility and feigned naivety, replies that she's ashamed to admit it, but she led a remarkably sheltered life under the care of her elderly relative's grandmother, and as a result, she didn't truly understand how the wider world operated, and she certainly knew nothing whatsoever about the prominent Ju family. The fox's eyes narrow, his gaze piercing. He asks her, does she honestly expect him to believe such a patently absurd tale? He glares at her dubiously, clearly unconvinced by her carefully constructed facade. Then a flicker of something akin to grudging respect crosses his features. It seems his new bride is far too gutsy and shrewd for her own good. That is probably the very reason why his cunning brother brought her into this intricate game. He acknowledges that everything she has said is likely a fabrication, yet, surprisingly, he does not detest her for it. Perhaps it is because she resonates with him on some fundamental level, more so than his own seemingly virtuous brother, and he is undeniably curious about the intimate techniques Yihyeon has been teaching her. Then he drops a surprising and rather personal revelation. Did she know that he has remained a virgin for more than a millennium? Yuyeon's eyes widen in disbelief. She exclaims that it's impossible. He insists that he does not lie, his voice firm, but she remains skeptical, saying no way. He reiterates with a serious expression that he is indeed telling the truth. She shakes her head, still unconvinced. He's too good-looking, she argues internally. There's simply no way he's a virgin after all this time. He sighs, seemingly deciding to drop the subject for the moment. Never mind, he says, and they should begin their marital duties. Yuyeon, a sudden wave of panic washing over her, abruptly turns around and attempts to flee. The fox looks at her questioningly, his head tilted in confusion, and asks, where is she going? He then shifts back into his human form, his handsome features now etched with amusement, and lets out a soft laugh as he calls out her name, remarking that she is truly peculiar. Yuyeon thinks vehemently that she doesn't want to hear such a comment from him, especially in their current predicament. With a swift movement, he reaches out and gently grabs her hand, his touch surprisingly tender. He tells her to follow him, leading her towards a large, ornate bed draped with the grills. We observe our protagonist, Seol Yuyeon, as she slowly drifts back to consciousness, enveloped in a surprising warmth and comfort. Her first sensation is the steady beat of a heart against her ear, and she murmurs a sleepy, almost incoherent protest, her voice thick with lingering slumber, telling the encompassing presence that no, she truly cannot continue. She is utterly depleted and desperately requires sleep. Her eyelids flutter open, struggling against the heavy weight of exhaustion, and her vision gradually clears. With a sudden, disorienting jolt, she realizes that the arms holding her so tenderly belong to Yihyeon, the enigmatic older twin, the master of the daylight hours. He perceives her awakening and, with a gentle, almost regretful movement, carefully slides her back onto the soft, yielding bedding. He pulls the luxurious silken covers around her shoulders with a tender, protective gesture, his voice a low, soothing whisper as he bids her to sleep tight. A fleeting moment of unexpected gentleness in their complicated and dangerous arrangement. In the hushed, dimly lit hallways beyond her chamber, the ever-present servants exchange furtive, hushed whispers, their voices like the rustling of dry leaves, laden with intrigue and speculation. Did they hear the latest development? The second twin, the formidable Yihwi, the one who rules the shadows and the night, has reportedly been consistently lying with the same human woman lately. It has been nearly a full week, a significant and unprecedented deviation from his usual pattern of fleeting, detached encounters with a rotating cast of concubines and other fleeting distractions. One bolder, perhaps more reckless servant ventures a hesitant question, attempting to glean further details or confirmation regarding this unusual and much-discussed development, but their inquiry is met only with a profound, telling silence and a series of knowing, cautious glances exchanged between their peers, the unspoken rules of discretion paramount within these ancient walls. Later, in a tense encounter under the cloak of encroaching darkness, our girl directly addresses the dark-time prince, Yihwi, her voice carefully neutral as she informs him with a weary sigh that her monthly bleeding has unfortunately begun, and therefore he should probably seek companionship elsewhere for the time being, a statement of fact rather than a plea. He slowly crosses his powerful arms over his broad chest, his handsome features unreadable, an inscrutable mask, and states in a tone devoid of inflection that no concubine, whether beast or human, has ever dared to reject his advances simply because their monthly cycle had commenced. Yihyeon, her patience already worn thin by the early onset of her period and the constant demands of her dual role, retorts with unconcealed irritation, her voice sharp with defiance, that she is already thoroughly pissed off that it started a full 2 days earlier than she had anticipated. But was he truly serious, she challenges, her eyes flashing? Did he genuinely still intend to lie with her while she was in her current uncomfortable and inconvenient condition? In a sudden, impulsive fit of sheer frustration and perhaps a touch of recklessness born from her exhaustion, she grabs a nearby decorative brick, a surprisingly solid and heavy object, and hurls it directly at his head. With a display of supernatural agility, he effortlessly dodges the potentially injurious projectile. Undeterred, and her temper now fully ignited, she unleashes a torrent of colorful, unflattering insults, her carefully maintained composure finally snapping under the accumulated pressure. A nearby servant, witnessing this audacious and unprecedented outburst of defiance, thinks with wide-eyed, palpable alarm that the human woman has finally, irrevocably lost her mind. Surely her head will be swiftly forfeit for such egregious insolence towards the feared Night Prince. Surprisingly, and to the utter astonishment of everyone present, Yihwi simply pats her head, his touch almost paternal, a bizarrely gentle counterpoint to her fiery rage. He remarks, his voice unexpectedly soft, that she must be experiencing quite some significant discomfort to be behaving in such an uncharacteristically emotional and volatile manner. After all, she had seemed perfectly fine, even compliant, just the previous day. He then calmly instructs the stunned servants to bring some soothing medicinal herbs from the household storage for her, a gesture of concern that leaves Yihyeon utterly speechless and deeply bewildered by his completely unexpected and atypical reaction. A servant who works primarily within Yihwi's private chambers later confides in hushed tones to other members of the household staff that the Lord has been spending an unusual and significant amount of time with the human woman, dedicating hours to her company that he would typically have allocated to seeking out various concubines or other forms of amusement. They note, with a mixture of awe and apprehension, that he hasn't requested the presence of any of the town's usual courtesans or companions since he began his intense involvement with her. Yihyeon, overhearing snippets of this gossip, confronts Yihwi, her voice a mixture of confusion and perhaps a dawning, uncomfortable understanding, asking, "What?" Yihwi allows a small, enigmatic smile to play on his lips, a strange, almost predatory glint flickering in his dark eyes, and says that she should feel entirely free to swear at him and make a thorough mess of things whenever the mood strikes her. It was, he confesses, in its own peculiar and perhaps twisted way, undeniably thrilling to witness her throw objects at him, to see such a raw, untamed display of genuine emotion, a stark contrast to the cloying sycophancy he usually encountered. Yihyeon blanches visibly at his unsettling words, a shiver of profound unease running down her spine at this revelation of his unusual predilections. He manages, with some effort, to suppress a low chuckle as her frown deepens, clearly deriving a perverse amusement from her obvious discomfort and confusion. She thinks to herself, a sense of grim pragmatism settling in, that despite the inherent danger and the utter strangeness of their interactions, she feels as though she has, paradoxically, gotten closer to him, or at least closer to understanding the depths of his complex and volatile nature. The more volatile their interactions become, the more she seems to penetrate his defenses, which, she supposes with a sigh, is all the more better for her ultimate mission. Deciding to seize the moment and perhaps further test his boundaries, she boldly slips off her outer jacket, revealing the soft curves of her shoulders, and announces with a hint of challenge in her voice that since she's feeling considerably better now, they should get started, a subtle invitation that hangs heavy in the charged air between them. The following morning, a different scene unfolds. We see the older twin, Yihyeon, sitting alone at a polished wooden table, a pensive, almost troubled expression clouding his usually serene features. He asks himself in a low, contemplative murmur what in the world has gotten into him lately. He finds, to his own considerable surprise and slight dismay, that he is constantly thinking about Yihyeon, her image intruding upon his thoughts even during his most important work, when his focus should be entirely dedicated to the complex affairs of their domain. He recalls their numerous conversations, even when she was merely providing her scheduled updates about his unpredictable brother's activities and moods. He consistently found his mind wandering from the pertinent topic at hand, his attention inexplicably drawn to her, to the subtle nuances of her expressions, the cadence of her voice. He admits to himself that he had been genuinely enjoying her company, finding a strange solace and unexpected pleasure in their interactions, even when she was simply fulfilling her assigned and inherently dangerous task. Perhaps, he muses, his gaze distant, it had all truly started when she first appeared so vividly in his dreams. In that ethereal, dream-forged landscape, they had ventured far beyond the suffocating confines of the estate's ancient walls, just the two of them, free from the burdens of their waking lives. He remembers spending what felt like a delightful eternity, browsed through an array of exquisite accessories in a bustling, vibrant shopping district, the dream world rendered with astonishing clarity. The image of her, slightly bewildered by the unfamiliar surroundings yet undeniably endearing in her innocent curiosity, lingered stubbornly in his mind long after he awoke. He recalled the almost overwhelming, impulsive desire to purchase for her every single glittering gem-inlaid trinket that managed to catch her eye, a desire to shower her with beauty and affection. He thinks wistfully that the dream, in its simplicity and tenderness, felt infinitely purer and more blissfully uneventful compared to the tangled, dangerous complexities of their shared reality. But that, he acknowledges with a certainty that resonates deep within his soul, was definitely the precise genesis of these unexpected, burgeoning feelings. He finally admits to himself, a hint of reluctant, painful honesty coloring his internal monologue, that he is experiencing a profound and unsettling jealousy over her forced closeness to his brother, a sentiment he finds both profoundly surprising and deeply unwelcome, a betrayal of his usual stoic composure. Later, in a moment of candid vulnerability, Yihyeon admits to Yihyeon that the main twin, her carefully chosen, ambiguous term for the volatile Yihwi, seems increasingly strange and unpredictable, his actions and words no longer aligning in any logical or predictable manner, making her task all the more perilous. Yihyeon, his expression carefully neutral, offers her a delicate porcelain cup of freshly brewed tea, the fragrant steam curling invitingly in the air. She accepts it without hesitation, her gaze meeting his briefly, and states simply, her voice devoid of any discernible emotion, that she will drink it, an act of trust, or perhaps resignation, in the face of the mounting uncertainty its luxurious fabrics. And then, under the watchful eyes of the night, they become intimate, the air thick with a complex mix of danger, desire, and deeply hidden agendas. We see our girl awake in the older twin's arms. She tells him that no, she can't do it anymore, she needs sleep. She realizes that it's Yihyeon. He slides her into bed and tells her to sleep tight. Then servant whisper among themselves that if they heard, the second twin has been lying with the same human lately. It's been nearly a week. A servant's advance a question and meets no reply. Our girl tells the dark time prince that her monthly bleeding has started. He should find someone else. He crosses his hands on his chest and says that no concubine, beast, or human has rejected him because their period started. She says that she's pissed enough that it started 2 days early. But is she kidding him? He still wants to lie with her when she's in this condition? She throws a brick at his head and he dodges it as she insults him. The servant thinks that the human has finally lost it. It'll be off with her head, for sure. He pats her head and says that she must be experiencing quite some discomfort to be behaving so emotionally. She seemed perfectly fine just yesterday. He tells them to bring some medicine from the storage. She looks at him questionably. The servant who works at his chambers said that the Lord spent time with the human when he would usually sought another concubine. They say he doesn't ask for the town's concubines after he started seeing her. She says what? He smiles and says that she should swear at him and make a mess of things. It was thrilling to see her throw things at him. She blanches at his words. He holds back a laugh as her frown deepens. She thinks that she feels like she's gotten closer to him, all the more better, she supposes. She slips off her jacket and says that since she's gotten better now, they should get started. In the morning, we see the older twin sit at the table and ask himself what has gotten into him. He keeps thinking about our girl, even during work. It was like this when he talked to ER. She was only giving him updates about his brother, yet he found himself straying from the topic. He was enjoying the time with her when she was just doing her job. Perhaps it started when she first appeared in her dreams. They ventured beyond the estate's walls, just the two of the P, and spent time browsing accessories in the shopping district. The image of her was amusing yet endearing, that he'd bought her every gem-imbibed accessory. He thinks that the dream was purer and more uneventful compared to their reality, but that was definitely when it started. He admits to being jealous of her closeness to his brother. Our girl admits that the main twin seems strange. His actions aren't adding up anymore. He gives her tea to drink, and she says that she will drink it. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.